For sake of interview, do you want to state your name and the position that you serve?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Stephen Schappaugh, and I'm the principal at Roosevelt High School in Des Moines, Iowa.
Okay. And the interview is mostly about family involvement and practices at school that get the community involved. So the first question are, what are 2 or 3 programs or activities that you do at Roosevelt to promote or increase parent involvement with their child's education?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing that is really popular is our community night. We do it on the Thursday of homecoming. Food trucks, a community parade, bouncy houses, a club fair, and then there's a fire that gets lit when it gets dark. And so that's an informal gathering of community stakeholders to celebrate Roosevelt High School. And I really think that opportunity to have families get to know their staff and sponsors of activities in that informal way. So that's not some structured, rigid thing that you have to sign a slot for to get access to, is a really powerful way to build those connections. Another thing that we did this year was I went to Oak Ridge and to the Deer Ridge apartment complex and had a meet and greet with the principal as a way to introduce myself to the community as a new principal at the school. And then the third thing is, we have those, traditional opportunities like conferences that exist for families to come and have that kind of, structure time to talk about their students' academic progress. So those are 3 things that come to my mind immediately. I hope that we're doing things continuously and thoughtfully and intentionally throughout the year to give stakeholders an opportunity to engage with us. But those are the first 3 things that come to mind.
Awesome. And they kind of cover all 3, like informal, formal, and then like you use the word structure. So do you have a way to gather feedback from parents that provide you some direction for your programs, policies, and changes? And if so, what are those methods and how often do you use them?
Yeah, so coming into this job, they did a survey of the parents to find out what they were looking for in a principal. And so I was given access to those survey results. And so that was a piece of information that I could utilize as I was putting together my entry plan to being principal at Roosevelt. Um, then there, I could do a survey whenever I want to. I don't have a schedule of when I do those surveys, but the district has a schedule for when they do surveys, like the Panorama survey. They do those in the fall and the spring, and so those are district initiated data points that provide me some insights, and then Panorama provides recommendations for steps you can take. There are all sorts of informal opportunities for me to get feedback. The primary would be the PTA meetings. I go to the first and last PTA meeting of the year, or sorry, first and third. That's a forum for parents to come and ask questions, raise concerns, etc. And then I try to be as present as one can possibly be at all of the different school events so that families can ask me questions, raise concerns, etc. And I haven't sent a survey home to families, but I know that's something I could do, and that would need to be infrequent to not provide surveys. So
that makes sense. Do parents have any formal role in decision making in your school or informal? And if so, how? You mentioned the PTA.
Yeah, they don't have a formal role right now. We are working on developing a school advisory council in which families would have a seat at the table. We're still learning about that structure and what that's to look like. We're adopting a model from the Philadelphia school system, and so I'm excited to learn more about that. And that'll be in full implementation next year, I believe. Informally, they certainly have a role by providing feedback, um, raising concerns, etc. We've revised some of our procedures, maybe not policies per se, but some of our procedures this year based upon family feedback after lockdowns, based upon family feedback after assemblies, things of that nature. So it's definitely informal right now, and it definitely does advantage those who have figured out the traditional ways of advocating for what they want to schools.
Okay. what tools such as newsletters, websites, social media platforms, etc., do you use to communicate with parents, and how often do you use these forms of communication in a school year?
Social media, I try to post things positive about Roosevelt every day. Um, I try to use social media as a way to highlight the awesome things that we do and to spread joy about the school and the community that we serve. Every Friday, I do a voicemail to families. I try to
Cool.
make it under minutes. And so that voicemail, we say who the student of the week is, who the staff champion of the week is, and then I give them important reminders about things that are upcoming, as well as celebrations that we might have in store for the school. Um, One of the downsides to it is that it's only in English. So one of the things that I've done is I download the recording and I send it to our ELL teacher. And so she goes over it with her newcomer students so that she can help them understand what's being said so they can pass it on to their parents at home, since there's not an easy way to translate my voicemails. That's the one thing that we've done to try to make it more accessible. And then we're trying to put all of our school announcements on Connext.
Yep, the principal I talked at the elementary level, and we stress it here, is the use of Connext, which has that translation feature built in for parents.
Yeah.
Okay, the similar question. How do you communicate information about your school to the community at large, not just parents? Like, do you have any systems or procedures that gather feedback from the general community as well? So you mentioned stakeholders and stuff like that, so beyond the parent.
Yeah, absolutely. So our students get those voicemails every week too. Um, so I think that they're a big part of the stakeholder group, the most important part of the stakeholder group. So they get the voicemails. They'll be a part of the school advisory council, and then we're actually working on formulating kind of like a task force that we're calling kind of like the model UN of Roosevelt, with student representatives from a bunch of different groups. And then in terms of community stakeholders, we have the Rider Club, which is a booster club for athletics. We have the foundation, which is kind of an alumni organization that does fundraising and scholarships. And so we have our activities director who goes to every Rider Club meeting. And then I try to go to those meetings a couple times a year just to have a presence and make sure they feel seen. And then I go to foundation meetings more frequently. And perhaps that's because right now, hi, sweetie, how are you? Yeah, are you having cereal? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Daddy's talking, okay? You want to sit and watch with me? You want to sit and watch with me? So the foundation's in the middle of a capital campaign, so I've been going to a lot of those meetings.
Okay.
But the foundation definitely has, and the Rider Club has, parents and alumni involved. And then informally, neighbors are very good at calling me and telling me exactly what they think about everything related to trash and the sound of the PA system and traffic. Um, One of the interesting things about Roosevelt is we have a lot of students whose parents work in the district. And so that's also a place where I can get feedback with people who wear different hats. And then I've just recently joined as a member of the chamber for the Des Moines West Side Businesses Group. And so that chamber covers businesses in the Roosevelt and Hoover neighborhoods. And so I'm going to be a part of their newsletter series. Their executive director just came to a fundraising event of ours. She's going to work with our Sisters for Success program. So informally, I'm always looking to build relationships and connections in the community so that I can get that feedback. I went and spoke at a neighborhood association meeting to introduce myself to them and things of that nature too.
Wow, there's a lot of great ideas. What are what are a few of the parent concerns that you deal with most often in your position as principal? And are there any issues that are more difficult or challenging than others?
That's a great question. Um, I had a meeting today, and one of the people I met with was like, so what's different than what you expected? You know, that kind of a question. So this is really funny, and this is like, I mean, it's not funny, but it's kind of funny. I get a lot of complaints about parking. There's not enough parking at Roosevelt High School. We're a school of 2,100 plus students. There are only 150 student parking spots. And so there's street parking, but it's just not enough, and people are angry all the time about parking, and they don't know why I'm not towing cars out all the time. Um, Second thing would be like safety related concerns. You know, we had back-to-back days with lockdowns this year, and so I saw a huge spike in concerns and questions around safety. Um, all fair and relevant. Every parent has a right to know that we're doing everything they can to make their kids as safe as possible. But they also need to know that we're limited in what we're able to do. Um, and then uh, the third concern would just be, broadly speaking, just like hot button issues that are like people just have what I consider extreme views on either side of the issue. And there's no room for middle ground for them. And that could take a variety of forms. That can be about COVID, that can be about the Pledge of Allegiance, that can be about critical race theory. It's just kind of like, what's the hot thing in the news right now? And
Yeah.
then I get inundated with what I would consider to be extreme views. Um, you know, like with COVID, like there were people who thought like I was going to kill their children, and there were people who thought that I was doing way too much. Like I never got an email that was like, you know, you found the perfect middle ground here. So,
I only laugh because I can imagine. I can imagine. And this kind of the next question is kind of similar to that, and it's instead of parent concerns, it's more what are the few community issue concerns that you deal with most often, and do any kind of non-school groups contact you with concerns?
yeah, so the neighbors hate the trash.
Okay.
So that's a huge thing. And so
And you guys really are like smack dab in the middle of Waterbury, basically. So
yeah,
I can see that very
yeah,
active neighborhood.
very active neighborhood. So, and I don't condone the trash. It's not like I'm a fan
Right.
of trash, but also like there's only so much I can do with the resources I have. So
Mhm.
I've turned it over to the students, and there's student groups that are picking up trash once a week to try and be responsive to that concern. Um, I try and make sure that I am responding as quickly and professionally as I can, while also being realistic about what my limitations are. Um, and then, uh, you know, there are people who are concerned about like activity off campus, whether they see kids what they believe to be smoking weed or not. I don't know if they are, or if they see kids fighting like a couple blocks away from school. Anytime they look like a school age kid, the community thinks that we should be like sending staff into the neighborhood to like
Gotcha.
resolve that. And so we're like, nope, like it's not within our capabilities.
Jurisdiction. Interesting. Um, and this is why I definitely wanted to talk to a high school principal because that's the area I have the least experience with. Um, so we've talked about parents and community. What are a few teacher related concerns that you deal with most often to prevent potential school or community relationship problems? So did that make sense?
Um, what are things that I try to do with teachers to make sure that people aren't upset?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, teacher related concerns that you deal with that prevent school or community relationship issues.
Um, Man, I'm struggling with this one.
It's a tough question. Um,
I mean, so like this year, I tried to outline to them the best of my ability my understanding of HF 802, and how I would defend them and support them. Uh, and I've only had one parent call and complain about critical race theory, so I guess that's a win. Um, they weren't happy with me, but it's a win that it's only one. Um, So I try to just proactively inform, and let them know what I see the boundaries as and what I am willing to support them on and what I'm not, so that they're not surprised. So, like when the mask mandate came back, I sent an email that I was just like, we can make this what we want to make it, but bottom line is this is the rule and I expect you to enforce it. I can't defend you not enforcing it when it's the expectation for everybody, kind of a thing. So I just try to be very forward with them about thoughts and expectations and boundaries, so that if a parent concern were to come to me, I would be able to address it in a way that is consistent with how I told them I would address it. So that way they can't feel like I'm surprising them by how I handle a situation.
Is there someone that you call or notify when difficult issues like you've mentioned or covered occur? So, or does your district have a procedure for principals to follow when communicating with parents, the community, or the press regarding these things?
So like a lot of the things that I've talked about, I don't contact anybody about because I just feel like I know what I'm supposed to do and how to handle it, and that they trust me to do that. Um, what I will say though is that when I am not sure what to do, I call Mike Vukovich, the director of high schools, and so I also notify him of a bunch of things if it might like hit the news. So like a lockdown, like hey, by the way, or a big fight, hey, by the way. Um, so I keep him in the loop on a bunch of things, because I don't want to be surprised by things. I know he doesn't want to be surprised by things.
Right.
I try to keep him in the loop on some things, and then he's the person that I call if I have a question that I know the answer to. Um, Informally, I text with the other high school principals, and ask them questions often. But those aren't about like serious issues. Those are about like, hey, this is probably something I should know, but I'm a first year principal and I don't. Like, how do I report this or how do I do that? So.
Right. Okay. And then the last question is, do you have any suggestions or tips for me as I prepare for an administrative position when working with parents or community members in the near future?
Yeah, I think being transparent is really valuable. Consistency is also really important because people talk. But I think the most important thing is to be sure of yourself. Parents sense people who are not sure, and then they like to jump on that lack of confidence in how we're presenting information. And so, be confident and just articulate, the decision and the why. And and then the last thing I would say is just like, and you're not going to make everybody happy. And be reflective when you're not making somebody happy. But the goal shouldn't be to make everybody happy. We need to be disrupting systems, not being complacent. And so, know your why and communicate that why and be consistent with it, and you'll be okay.
I like that. I like that a lot. Well, that's it. That's all I have. But I really appreciate your time and I hope you can get back to your family. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Good luck with your program.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.